Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming on in and taking seats, and we're going to get started. I'm David Ray. I have the honor to be on the board as a director as well as the board president, and have been in our school district since 1989 in some kind of capacity, whether that's principal or an assistant director of the outdoor ed program, or just some retired guy that just can't leave the district. So that's a little bit about who I am. I want to just thank all of you though for being here tonight. We have on an annual basis always look forward to launching our committees, and we typically do that up at the Outdoor Ed Center where we have our retreat. But this year, because of something called COVID, it seemed to distract us a little bit, and we thought, you know what, we really want to just spend some quality time with you tonight to really talk about what it means to be on a board committee, and then give you some time in your committees to be able to break out and really look forward to the upcoming school year. But before I go there, I thought if I could just really quickly if we could just introduce ourselves in the room. And so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm actually going to start with our students because they will model for us how this is done. So our student advisory group members, if you would stand up and just very quickly just shout out who you are.
My name is Lucas. I go to Douglas County High School, and I'm a senior this year. My name is Josh. I'm also a senior at Rock County High School, and we're the co-presidents of Student Advisory Group.
All right, give our student advisory group a round of applause. They also have a staff liaison. Derek, jump up and say hey.
Derek Cheney, District Activities and Athletics, and privileged to be the liaison for student advisory.
Very good, welcome. All right, let's have our fiscal oversight committee people. If you're a fiscal oversight committee person, please stand up. All right, same thing, quickly just shout out your name and tell us who you are.
Wayne Ice, and I work at Central. Mike Ray, I work at Morgan Stanley. Happy to be here tonight.
Mike Ray, is that a R-A-Y by chance? Long lost brothers, you're seeing it here for the first time, a reunion. And we even have similar hairlines, so welcome. Good.
Ed Kopletich, I work for Victory Construction and Refrigeration. Evan Goes, I work for TransUnion.
Let's give our FOC, or Fiscal Oversight Committee, a round of applause. All right. Long Range Planning Committee. If you're here with Long Range Planning Committee, we know that some of them are not here, but some of them are. So let's have you do the same thing. Go ahead and shout out.
John Freeman.
We have policy. I go to Rock County.
Cook Harris.
Valerie Richmond. Megan McDonald.
Larry Butler. Steve Frager.
Katie White.
All right, let's give our Long Range Planning Committee members a round of applause. All right. And our District Accountability Committee, sometimes we've referred to them as the DAC. Let's have you guys shout out. Go ahead, Chester.
Katie Lynchman, Select Market, but Principal Representative Staff. Becky Cruz, Executive King. Zoe Tessier, Rock County High School. Jessica Butler, Produced Member Representative.
All right, very, very good. Welcome. And if you are staff, stand up and just shout out your names real quick. Any staff members in our room?
Corey Wise, Superintendent. Matt Reynolds, Learning Services Officer. Scott Cook, Chief Operations.
Vicky Vanessa, Chief Financial Officer. And Mary Porter, General Counsel. Janelle Hyatt, Deputy Superintendent.
Andy Apter, Deputy Superintendent. There's one Marissa Rhodes here tonight.
Deputy Josh Hayes on that.
All right, let's give our staff and our SRO a round of applause. And our directors, our board directors, if you guys would stand up and shout out.
Coming up is the Dean.
Christine Townsend Shore. I am Krista Wilson. I am Susan Meek.
All right, board directors, give them a round of applause. I think I missed you, sir. Tell me your name and who. All right, very good. Welcome. All right, did we miss? Oh, the person that Sandy Marsh, our assistant secretary, who is in charge of all the logistics and getting us here. So let's give Sandy a big round of applause. I'm sorry? Mr. IT, want to jump up and tell us who you are? All right, welcome, Drew. All right. So I think we've gotten about everybody in the room. I saw Brad sneak in. Where did you sneak in, Brad? There he is. Jump up and tell us who you are and what committee you're on.
Brad Geiger from Long Range Planning.
All right, welcome, Brad. Good to have you here. So we thought really today we'd spend the first hour really between myself and Superintendent Wise to really set the stage and really give us some common language about, one, where we're headed with our school district, but I also want you to know some common language in terms of what it means to be a board committee member. So Drew, if you'll hit the next slide for me. So the first thing we want to talk about is how we govern, how the board governs. And basically the board has one employee. And sometimes Superintendent Wise likes that, sometimes he wonders about that. But we have one employee that we provide direction to. The board typically is in the role of defining the what. We don't define the how. That's why we delegate that to Superintendent Wise and the staff to do that. But we set policies in terms of visionary kinds of policies, in terms of oversight type policies, and then staff in turn then determine what does that look like when we implement those things. So the way that we govern is through policy, through our end statements, through executive limitations. Executive limitations, you've probably, if you've watched a board meeting, you've heard that we're working on those as we speak. Those are the things that we say to our superintendent, here's the guardrails. We will delegate all the operations to you, but here's the guardrails of things that we want you to pay attention and stay within. Our ability to bridge to the community is why you're here. Because as you can see in this room, we have citizens and students. And really, we rely on you to be those people that we bridge with. Because that's also one of our purposes, is to bridge community to the district. So that's why we are so grateful to have you. Not all boards have these committees. As a matter of fact, only one of these committees has a statutory reason to exist. The rest of these committees are condoned or committees that the board has established because it's important to us to have people like you helping us do our work. So those are the 5 committees we heard. Next slide, please. So when we talk about our end goals and our end statements, we really have 5 things that we pay attention to, and these are the 5 things. One is academic excellence, and that encompasses everything from social, emotional, physical, mental health. All those things fall under that category of academic excellence. We also have outstanding educators and staff. That's also on our dashboard. Those are the things that we pay attention to. Another way to look at these are if our district were to collapse and we'd have to rebuild, these are the things that we would say need to be put back in place immediately so that we would be Douglas County School District. We believe we value our safe, positive climate and culture, our collaborative relationships with parents, and then finally, our financial well-being. So those are the 5 things that our board will always be focused on. As a matter of fact, when you see our meetings this year, we will always have a theme. One of these will be one of our themes that we are working on, because staff will come to us and tell us how they're implementing those things, how they're monitoring the progress in those 5 areas, and the board then will receive those reports and give staff feedback about, are we getting to the place where we envisioned we should be in those 5 areas. Of course, all of these things are under one umbrella, which is our mission statement. And our mission simply is that we provide an educational foundation where all students can reach their individual potential. So that's the umbrella for all things that we do. So we're always asking ourselves the question, is this helping us accomplish our mission, which is to ensure that students are moving towards their individual potential? Next slide, please. So the purpose of all of you is to support the work of the board. And I can't get more concise than that, is if we were to ask our committees to tell someone outside of this room what their purpose is, I would hope you would be able to say, I work to support the work of the board. And that's why we desperately need you, and that's why we are desperately grateful for you, because 7 of us simply cannot do the work that all of you do. And we are truly, truly grateful that you're willing to serve in this capacity for that reason. So that's primarily your purpose. So as we talk about what that looks like, I want to share a couple of things to kind of have you keep in mind. Next slide, Drew. So there's a difference between what I would call watchdog kinds of committees versus a committee member or a board committee member. Watchdog is an important thing. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened because of watchdog journalism or people that certainly let us know that there are things they're concerned about. I would tell you our board has mailboxes full of people that are self-proclaimed watchdogs, right? They're going to tell us we either agree with you or we disagree, and here's why. A watchdog posture is one of whistleblowing, right? They're looking for reasons that maybe needs to be revealed so this organization does business differently. They're collecting info about wrongdoings. They're warning members, hey, pay attention. Something's going on that you need to be aware of. Please know that this is happening. They sound the alarm. They have an offensive posture, right? They feel like that they want to make sure that people know that something is not right. And so they scrutinize everything that goes on in that organization. That's what a watchdog does. I don't want to give you the impression that watchdog is a negative thing. I think there's some real benefits in people doing these things. For you as a committee member, though, it's not your posture, if that makes sense. Your posture really is this. You focus on research for us. You do the hard work in terms of really making sure that you have the information that will help the board. You advise. You have a laser focus. Whatever topic your topic is, you become laser focused on that topic and that topic only, as opposed to having to be concerned about the entire organization. Your primary concern then is the organization, and you're advocating for that success, because you know that if you're doing your role in advocating for the success of the organization, ultimately then our students are benefiting. And finally, you're ambassadors. You're the people, as I said, that we bridge with you so that when you're out talking to your networks, you're spreading the news about how this organization runs and works well. And I think that's really an important responsibility to remember, that as soon as you say you are, I'm so-and-so and I am with the Long Range Planning Committee, all of a sudden you take on this role of being an ambassador to be able to begin sharing the things that you're focused on that's helping the board do good things for kids. So I share that just to give you to help you delineate the difference, because sometimes it's very easy for us to get into the watchdog mode. It's very easy for us to want to scrutinize and call things out. But this is where we need you. If you're going to help the board support our work, this is what helps us do our work. All right, next slide, please. So there's some principles then. This is straight out of our policy governance book, and these are just, I paraphrase this because there's a lot of words. These are the things that committee members do or support or adhere to because it's our policy, because that's what we're asking committees to do. So number one is, you know that you're charged by the board. The board will tell you this is our priority for the work that you're to do. That comes from the board. The board gives that direction to you to tell you what your focus should be and what your priority should be. Helps the board do its job. Expectations, priorities, and authorities specifically stated are granted by the board. So in other words, a committee can't all of a sudden say, you know what, I know the board wants us to do this, but this seems a little more interesting to me. Let's dive into this instead. You cannot exercise authority over the superintendent or staff. Every committee has a liaison, a staff liaison. They're there, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but they're there to consult with. They're not there to be directed. They're the experts in terms of how the operation works. Therefore, we need to respect that they have a role that they're performing in our organization, but it is not a committee member or anyone's prerogative to tell them how to do their job. This one is interesting. It does not monitor the performance of the same subject as the committee's focus. So although we encourage a lot of networking and interchange of ideas with our committees, this is one we have to be aware of. So in other words, the District Accountability Committee, their purpose is really to look at data and really highlight where we're doing well and where our needs are in terms of student achievement. We would not ask them to monitor the performance of our strategic plan. That would be somewhat of a conflict because essentially the strategic plan is carrying out the action for what that group is highlighting. So therefore, that group stays focused on simply highlighting the achievement results, looking at the district plan to deal with those, but then also understanding that a strategic plan group of people are the ones that are actually carrying out some of those revelations. Unless legally required, committees are typically ad hoc. This is kind of an interesting one for us because most of your committees never stop. they usually are ongoing. But in our policy governance, it says that typically they're ad hoc groups where once you completed a task or once you've completed something that the board has assigned to you, that your committee is completed. We have not done that because we feel like that the work that you're doing needs to be on an ongoing basis. So, but MBOC is a perfect example. So once the bond and the MLO, all those projects are finished, they are an ad hoc group that no longer will continue. The other committees that we have are committees that we feel like need to continue on. Have clear and specific goals, objectives, and timelines. That's part of your breakout tonight, is just to kind of have that understanding of what is our timelines for accomplishing the tasks that we're assigned to do. And then, of course, as always, meetings are subject to open meetings law and conducted according to your bylaws. So those are the principles from our policy governance book that directs you as a committee member or you as a committee in terms of your function. Next slide, Drew. So we talked about liaisons. How do we distinguish between the difference between a staff liaison and a board liaison? Staff liaisons are there to help clarify operational practices, right? So if there's a need for us to understand how things are done in this district, that's what staff are there for. They assist with finding answers. Obviously, as a committee, we want you to have all the tools and resources you need to do the tasks we're asking you to do. Staff helps us with those answers to those questions. They can be consulted with as needed, but they're not an active member. So oftentimes, their most comfortable place is to sit on the side and wait for you to invite them in if you have a question or you need to consult with. So they're not an active member, they don't vote. They simply are there to provide you a resource. And they present information that supports your charge. So that's their other task, is to make sure if you need more information about something, that they come back and they formally present that to you. The board liaisons have a different role. So again, we're there to help convey our priorities, give you the direction of the board. We're there to consult with the committee chairs. So when they're setting agendas and setting timelines and objectives, they're working together to set those. A liaison can interpret any kind of policy or action the board has taken. Oftentimes, some of you will have in your agendas a time for board to update, whether there's action that was recently taken or any kind of board reports for that purpose. And we're the communication pipeline. So it's a two-way communication kind of mechanism where we convey to you the things the board would like you to know, and then you convey to the liaison the things that the board needs to know. And then finally, you also can consult with your board liaison, but again, they tend to be a fly on the wall as well, and wait until they're needed to be consulted with or to give you clarity about something, but they're not an active voting member on your committees either. So that's the purpose of our staff liaison and board liaisons. Next slide, please. So one of the things, some of the committees already have what we call a code of ethics. It really talks about, here's the expectations and how we're going to behave or how we're going to act as a committee member. These are more universal. I believe these are reflected in almost all the committees that have a code of ethics. If you don't have a code of ethics, you may want to think about that and talk about that. But these are some of the universal things that are there. First of all, we all know we're here for kids. We're here for those two guys right there in the audience right now, right? That's our purpose. That's our function. We want to make sure they're able to thrive in our system and do well in those areas that we mapped out. We expect you to openly express your opinions, and we expect those to be done in the meetings as opposed to outside of the meetings, right? So sometimes people are really quiet in a meeting, and all of a sudden we'll find out that they're not happy with how the committee is moving forward. That's not okay. We want, as a code of ethics, we want you to take care of things there and work through anything that maybe is uncomfortable during your meeting times. Abide and support the decisions that are made. So once a decision is made by your committee, it means you support those, even if you may have advocated a different position for that particular decision. Once a decision is made, the committee's made a decision and we support it. Not use your membership as a way to influence others. So our students, like Josh and Lucas, they couldn't go up to their principal and say, you know what? We're with the student advisory group principal, and we're telling you that we think you should do it this way, right? So we don't want to use our position. And as I said earlier, as soon as you say, hi, my name is, and I am part of this committee, you become a person that is associated with that committee. Attendance needs to be consistent, cannot ask or speak on behalf of the committee unless authorized. So when you're out there and you say, my name is, and I'm with this committee, the assumption is you're speaking for your committee. So the safer route is always to speak as a citizen if you have issues or concerns or things that you're questioning, as opposed to sharing your title or what committee you're working with. Respect the confidentiality, that sometimes there's issues that need to remain confidential in our committees, and we want to make sure we respect that. You should recuse yourself if you feel like that there's a conflict of interest. If a decision's about to be made where you may profit from or may provide you an advantage, you should recuse yourself from that decision making. Respect opinions of others and make no disparaging remarks about others in or out of committee meetings. Again, the next, it kind of goes along with the next phrase that I think I've always had in about every school I've worked in, and that is, don't let your in-house go to the outhouse. Because the outhouse is a smelly, undesirable place, right? So if we have issues internally, we want to resolve those issues internally, as opposed to throwing it out there in social media or throwing it out there into your other networking groups. We want to resolve those issues here within your committee. So in terms of disparaging remarks, we all have the same goal, and that's to work hard for kids. And so none of us deserve to be criticized or disparaged because our passion is all the same. That's for the benefit of children. So those are the universal code of ethics that we'd like you as a community member to keep in mind and help adhere to. So again, your ultimate accomplishment is supporting the board to do the good decision making for our kids. Okay, next slide, Drew. So tonight, what we're asking, once you go to breakout sessions, we want you to make sure you've clarified what is your committee's charge according to the board direction, and your liaisons will be there to help you with that. I want you to review some of the format in terms of how you guys meet, whether you're meeting remote, whether you're meeting in person. And then if you want to talk about code of ethics, that would be an appropriate place to do that, and just reconfirming what your schedule is for meetings for this year. So that, I think, lays the foundation of who you are and how you will help us do some great work for kids. And again, if you don't hear me say this over and over again, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for serving. Thank you for volunteering. We're truly grateful. Director Chantra Shore. Say again? Did we not call Mbach? Why didn't you hit me? Mbach, stand up. Thank you, Director Chantra Shore. You're on the Mbach Mill Levy Bond Oversight Committee. Shout out your names real quick.
John Freeman.
Vanessa Hoffman.
Jim Morris.
All right, let's give Bach a round of applause. Sometimes I need you to be a watchdog and say, hey, what's up with that? All right, so that's all our committees. The next segment of our presentation will be to have Superintendent Wise really kind of do some reminiscing a little bit about where we've been with this district as well as where we're headed. And again, this is just for the purpose for all of us to be on the same page in knowing what lies ahead for our school year. So it's my pleasure to introduce Superintendent Corey Wise.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
So to echo a few things, thanks for spending your time here tonight. Thanks for spending a lot of your time as a part of this district. Many of you are parents, students, staff. You are former parents of our district, and then just in the community. We have a lot of resources. We have a fantastic county and fantastic school district. So as we start thinking about our roles and our work, I want to kind of just share a little bit of where we are. And, reality, I want you to know, elephant in the room, we have Tri-County Health meeting, voting on a potential public health order, so I will address that also. And I want you to know as part of where we are in current state and planning for what's next. Reality, we can control what we can control. And so how we take that and move it forward is part of our work. And so I just want you to know, I think that's the greatest asset of Douglas County. Not just the school district, but Douglas County. It's our people. We will have many opinions. We'll have many similarities and we'll have many differences. But the one thing I'm going to ask and challenge is we have to put first our priorities to students, and no matter what it is, do our best to help each of you have your best experience. So I want to start that way. And I am proud to say, as we go to the next slide, Drew, we've had a wonderful start. This is my 26th year in education. All of them here in Douglas County. I can't tell you a first day of school that hasn't had energy and electricity, anxiety, and hope. But I'm going to tell you, being out in the schools this year, it felt different. There's more of a want to be back and a more of a want to see things. And, it's been a tough year. So as we talk about that, we also have to accentuate the positive of that side. We've had to navigate this past year of a pandemic. And I think all of us are hoping going into the summer with vaccinations, going into it with warmer weather and coming back, that we'd start off the year with a little less of that pandemic. But reality is, with the new variants, with the changes, with the updates, we're going to have to adjust. And sometimes that adjustment, even at times where we're planning, comes at, not the opportune time. To start the school year, not the opportune time. But we maximize. We've had a great week and a half. We're going to continue to make it great no matter what in that process. So as we go into slide 2, actually 3, I want you to know this. Opening a school district during a pandemic, it's a challenge. It's a complex environment. It's challenging for the students coming back, for the staff, and for the families. But I want you to know in that work, I can't tell you the endless hours that staff put into it. When I say to you, you're all volunteering to do this. You have full-time jobs, families, maybe you're retired and you put in a lifetime of a career and you're still choosing to put in hours. But I want to say the work last year of staff and the work continued to plan to get ready for this year and moving on, I can't say enough. And when you look at your cabinet liaisons, not everybody knows what cabinet members do. I need to do a better job of sharing their value. They've had years of experience, whether it be in our school district or other school districts, in careers. When you look at how you get into operating a school district, an organization this large, the largest employer in Douglas County, but also managing 63,000 students, close to 9,000 employees. I mean, the work and the resumes that they have, I can't say enough for the time that they put in even to serve on these. And so when you take a look at that, we do know, as we talk about, I was on my phone a second ago because the vote that was supposed to take place last night got pushed to tonight. We heard it was going to be at 4:30, but there was a lot of dialogue, which can happen. No offense to the board or any board, right? But I want you to know that the vote was just made, and many of you might have also had updates, but there is a public health order. The public health order is universal masking for 11-year-olds and down. What that means for Douglas County schools, and this is a common question I get, so I want to paint this a little bit with accuracy. We as a school district will have to follow this health order. Okay, so there's choice of what if the Board of County Commissioners opts out. Even in that health order, it states, even if a county opts out, school districts have to operate under that. Okay, so I just want you to know there's times where there's variables, questions, misinformation, but the fact is, this is our reality. This is how we'll step it forward, and we're gonna make it the best no matter what. But when you look at 11-year-olds and down, what that means, 94% of our sixth graders are 11. So then you put it out of sixth graders, okay? Some of our sixth grade are in elementary, some are middle school, but we will have that plan. We'll start working it forward. We met with principals this morning to prepare, and we are gonna meet again with principals on Thursday, start to prepare so we can work with our staff, because it is an adjustment. What does that look like? Especially at that grade 6. That's gonna be complicated, especially when you have it of sixth graders, seventh graders, and eighth graders. But we've seen other districts start to do that. We are prepared and ready, and we'll adjust as we go, okay? I also want you to know that it could be fluid throughout the year. We will continue to monitor. On our district website, the dashboard of the past has changed. So if you look at the dashboard, it shows positive cases in any of our schools. That's both staff and students. And so you can start that correlation of what we have. We're also trying to work on what that means with any of the students or staff that are positive with COVID, but might be vaccinated. So we're doing our best to not only work with our own data and adjust, but also provide that data to Tri-County, because we know that impacts, okay? And I can see by faces, you know, anytime, I believe this, anytime if there's an elephant in the room, the best course of action is just to share that. And do know that we will continue to work on that together. It's not ideal, but right now there's not a perfect. It's what we make of it. And I say that as a move into, as we get moving forward past some of this work. You know, our number one job is to get past a lot of the conflict. We're in a polarized state. There are a lot of opinions, there are a lot of emotions. But the one thing that I think President Ray pointed out that I want to remind ourselves, priorities. We are here to provide the best education for our students. So when I start off in saying that, what does that mean? How do we help each student be at your best to make this the best district for you and put you in a spot where you're going to move on to bigger and better things and look back on it? Ask a quick question. How many of you graduate through Douglas County Schools in this room? We have one, but even one in this group this small. It's amazing how many people we have come back and live in Douglas County that graduate through our school system. And I say that the number of people that are employed in our school system come back and live and raise their families. And I think that's just a testament to what we have. Okay, so on next slide, this is a bit of the policy. I want you to know. I was hoping this time I'd have the health order, but because it took a little longer, but in that health order that I read, it does show that even as a school district, as a county, if we were to opt out, school districts have to follow. So that will be in that language if you pull that up. But we go into the next slide. And where we are going forward is a bit of a recap of where we were. You know, we worked hard. Last year was the first time going through this. But as we look back on it, as much as there's sayings that hindsight is 20/20, there's some things that I think we'd always think about what we could do better and different. Our elementary schools were in person full more than they were not. And you always want to add and increase that. But as you look back about the success that we did have in that planning, we were in person a larger amount of time than we were out. And we transitioned and we learned how to adapt and respond. Our high schools came back after spring break full in person as one of the first school districts to have our high schools back full in person. We finished the year strong. It was different because we did have pushing out and we weren't expecting to have that put onto us. But we adjusted and we were able to do that. But part of the reason why we were able to do that is we had a plan to get staff vaccinated. And through that plan to get staff vaccinated, it happened a lot faster and we jumped ahead of others. And this isn't about coming in first, but I think you have to maximize your opportunities, maximize your resources, and then adjust appropriately. So as we start looking at those, I want you to know, looking back, even in a tough year, there was a lot of positive. Think about your own personal life and how much you had to adjust and weren't ready for. Think about your professional life. Each of us in our experiences, I don't think we're prepared or planned for what we faced. Now, as we move forward on that side, I want you to know that, some of the things we planned as we came back. We had our beginning of the year, not only was it more normal, and as I heard from the students, the best thing about the year so far is you came back and it felt normal. So I'm going to quote you a little bit on that end. But we had our soft starts. We had our transition grades that came back, and we really worked on personalizing that. So kindergarten soft start. We had transition years coming back with that grade level to really get to know each other, work in the schools. That's important to build culture. But it's also more intentional to build in that mental health, that wellness. Through this past year, you look at the trauma. Some of it might just be unorganized to come back, being in person. Some of it might be that we really lost out on that social side. There's more anxiety. Sometimes when you struggle, you gain more anxiety and stress. So how we adjusted last year, each person's coming back a little bit different. We wanted to address that. So we try to find different ways, not only on key transition years, but also really to personalize to each student and each employee. And we did that well within our schools in this first week, and we can continue to build off of it, because now as you have more transitions, you have to be aware, and you have to tend to it. So on our next slide, I want you to know that I want to say this. As community members that are involved, you know a lot of this, but I want to say thank you. The bond and mill levy made a difference. It made a difference on things that we were not planning for. Because in 2018, we never thought about the impact of a pandemic. But yet we were ahead of things because we added to our mental health. Irony at times presents itself when we don't expect it. So when you look at this, we added counselors at the elementary level, middle school, and high school levels. Counselors that now are playing a bigger part. Not on those check-ins and opportunities, but also providing support to our teachers. Elementaries have never had counselors. So to really lead that out of trying to build out more support, and when you look at the social emotional learning, what does that mean? It goes back to some of the things that we started with back when I started education. We want excellence. Rigor is often at times used in education language to say that toughness of class, the preparation of post-high school or college readiness. But you can't get to that rigor without starting with the relationships. And so when you look at that social emotional and how you check in and work on that side, it works on knowing individuals where you're at. Scaffolding up to help everyone have the support to do that. So I think in that end, I just want you to know that through that piece and the planning, we've avoided some of the cuts that would really tragically impact our school district. Even in years where this past year we had close to $31 million in cuts. We were very cautious and purposeful, and it's set us up to be better off moving into this year, even in a post-pandemic year. Our strategic plan, as you look at it, and we said before, the ideas of increasing student engagement, that goes back to that social emotional. Student engagement isn't just being here, because as I talk to you and I look at you, it's hard for me to tell in this way of giving you information how well you're engaged. Some of you are nodding heads, but you might be thinking about the impact. Okay, so I have to go home and work with my kids on being masked tomorrow, or my grandkids being masked tomorrow. So talking about student engagement is how well do we really know students and make it relevant and interesting, get them involved, getting them challenged themselves and conquering those things. And so as we look at that, the key thing as we go, our strategic plan really sets the stage. It gives us a foundation to go back to. That alignment, it connects the board ends to our goals of our district and really puts it in action in our schools. We look at postgraduate success. I touched on that a little bit, but we have great pathways for career readiness, industry certification, career and technical education, which we addressed in the last bond and MLO. We look at our advanced placement, our concurrent enrollments, the opportunities that our kids have in our schools. And even this past summer with our capital improvements, we have brand new programs starting in many of our schools, and they're going to continue. So I think that piece of as we walk into all of our schools, but especially our high schools, giving a tour to families and parents, the one thing I think is common everywhere is this doesn't look like the same schools that I went to. When you walk in, you see video broadcast studios. You see biotechnology. You see criminal justice, fire science. Kids are jumping into frozen lakes and doing rescues. How many of you had that when you were in high school? It's thanks to you. It's all of us working together on that side. And when we talk about in the next slide, we're going back to our budget. And I referenced this a little bit, so I got ahead of myself. But while I have notes, if you can't tell, I try to have a lot of it up here and go back to so I don't miss things. But going back to our budget and how we work, a lot goes back to Kate Kataska and our finance work. You know, she's done a great job with her team really setting the stage of how we are prepared for the future. While we made deeper cuts up to that $31 million, it allowed us to be in better shape for the future because other districts had to look at those cuts. Now, we were able to get some ESSER funds, some extra funding this past year, that even in a time of COVID and downturn in the economy and being under-enrolled, we had many families that kept their kids at homeschool, at home. First thing I see in going to our elementaries, number of kindergartens that are up and a number of first graders that weren't in kindergarten. So that means they stayed at home and now went right into that first grade where they would have been. You know, that's noticeable, and you see that. And how do we adjust on those things? But when you look at that piece of where we were with under enrollment, we did gain extra funds, and it helped us. It helped us move into this year where we can have better planning, better support, and work for a better future. And I'm going to talk about what that means. But when you go into these things, I think the key piece is we have to remember where we were. Since 2009, and you look at state funding, and I'm going to say this, I'm a native of Colorado. Colorado education funding is one of the most complex, misunderstood, and I could put you to sleep in a heartbeat if we get into it, topics that we can have. Many of you in this room probably know that better than I do. You could share it better than I can. And we're going to need that. Because when we look at the funding piece, since 2009, you know, we've had a cumulative loss. And not only is it a loss, but it's a loss that is close to $700 million. Kate, about $670 million since 2009. So we're doing more with less. And we wonder in Douglas County that we're paying a lot of taxes. We live in a very high socioeconomic area. And it's not to blast or throw under the bus the process, but the reality is, while our taxes go in, the equalization, and Tabor and Gallagher puts it out to where we don't get as much back. We're one of the least funded school districts in the metro area. So we depend on that local base, and that's a bond and MLO. But the good thing, while we don't ever want to raise taxes, I get our community. I've been a part of it now for 25 years also. We know where that money goes, and we can drive that. And we can be better at that, and we need that partnership within it. So as we're going to do that, money does matter. It allows us to plan. It allows us to adapt in pandemic times. But it allows us also. How many of you remember the best teacher you ever had? I can tell you I can. I can tell you almost every teacher at each grade level who made a difference. But the teacher who made the biggest difference, I stood in top for him. And that's why I'm here in Douglas County. How many of you can think of the teacher that made the biggest difference in your kids' lives or your grandkids? I got to meet again a parent of 2 educators in our district. I bet you those 2 teachers matter. Number 1 indicator of student success, the quality of the teacher. It moves a student ahead or it can set a student behind. So I'm going to say this to you with the passion that we need to get out to our community. We're going to need to get back out. We're going to need to go at our finances and paint that picture because we need to be able to hire and keep the best. And we can't do that to be second. We don't have to be paying more than everybody, but boy, we sure have to do better and look at our finances and how we do that. We're going to have to depend on our local base and paint that picture of why. Show the metrics, show the examples. So as we start going, we're in a much better spot. We're in a much better spot than I would have anticipated. Going into this school year, we've been able to not only build to have some of the PPE to be ready for these changes, have those ESSER funds to execute and put that out, and we have to meet CDE's requirements on using those. We've submitted those, we're on track. We've dotted our I's, crossed our T's because of a great financial team and great people working with us. But we also now have the ability where we're able to look at how we put money back towards staff. We did that with putting back some of the money that people lost in those furlough days, restore salary, and then look at raises. But to keep that going, we have to set a plan. So we're going to be working on our compensation system. Anytime we work on making a compensation system better, we have to remember, we don't have as much to work with. It doesn't mean that we can equal to some of our neighboring districts. Yet. So as we go into the next slide, this is a key piece. Our ESSER funds and working for that, it's allowed us to have multiple modalities. We have in-person, we have EDCSD, we had e-learning last year. We've evolved e-learning a little bit to have EDCSD that is hybrid and also EDCSD that is fully remote. We have the ability to flex if we need to, students to go back and forth. Now, we aren't trying to do that each week or each month. That's not healthy. But the ability to provide multiple opportunities to meet each person's needs is important in the school district. And also to adjust within our schools for those with or without masks that we started, and now moving into new health orders, we can adjust. And we've done that partly because of our work and our planning within this. Okay, we've provided technology for when we needed to go remote. I don't anticipate that this year, but we're ready if that does need to happen. We have technology for those that have to isolate, technology for those who want to work remote. We've increased our summer learning, and we're going to continue that throughout the year because the best time to increase and advance learning, whether it be catching up or advance further, is during the school year when you have all the resources and time in one spot. So we have a resource in which to do that, and also to look at what's most important. Those literacy structures. Literacy, reading, and writing transfers to every subject and every grade level. So as we get going into the next slide, I want you to know that we appreciate the local community. We appreciate everyone's support. When we look at that mill levy, we look at the things in which we've been able to address. And this is a long slide with a lot of stuff. But I've captured a lot of that already. But, we look at the pay gaps in our employees, and we're going to continue that this year. That not only includes pay gaps of years of service, masters in education, or other work, licensure, CTE certification, credentialing to teach college courses for transcripted college credit. We also look at the number of counselors we've added, special education support, which is a focus for this year, our comprehensive SEL and wellness, our mental health. And I want you to know that this also passes through charter schools. Coming up in the spring, Kate and team are working on a Citizen's Guide to Budget, and I think that's really a brainstorm of a lot of the people in this room. So I just want to say those ideas make us better. We make us better. As we go to the next slide, and I am getting close to being finished, we're doing all this for our students. Our budget work, our operations work, our HVAC work, our landscaping work. When we think about everyone's role within this district, we're doing it really for how do we help students be at their best. And as we look at that, it kind of ties back into what you've heard in some themes. Our big rocks are really about what's going to make the biggest difference. Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck? And I say that we're going to invest further in some of the work that we've already been doing, but we're going to make sure we're doing it really, really well. And that's enhancing our work with professional learning communities. Teaching is a profession. It's a skill, and it's a skill that you can get better at. So how do we give the time and resources to help our staff be at their best? So part of our big rocks and themes is investing not only in the time and the resource, but also working on those data protocols. What does our data tell us? And breaking it down to where it's not so complicated or overwhelming. That data can help us share of where our individual students are in our classes, let alone say, what are you doing? You're doing a great job. Where are you spending your time? What sort of assessment are you giving? How is this transferring? What are our metrics that say we are doing a great job as a school and as a district? And that's really the essence of professional learning communities, because it should be across the board. And sometimes this is education speak, but I hope it makes sense that the only way you know where you're going is taking a look at where you've been. And our data tells a story. It helps us with our curriculum alignment, helps us what we might be missing, and what else we might need. Oh, and I'm on the wrong side. Keep going one more. Sorry, Drew. We also want to focus on, as we said, coming back. A big rock is we understand that we have to work on our well-being, our health, our wellness. It's hard enough to be a kid in any time. Before the pandemic, I think it's the hardest time to be a kid right now. The phones, the technology, the social media, it's incredible. So as a parent of a senior, I think about the pressure and the distractions, the obstacles, the temptations that students face. It's different than when I was a child. We had troubles also. And those are going to evolve and change over time. But right now, it's hard to be a kid. And then you throw in COVID, and it's tougher. But I say that also as adults, and I say that even with masks. I don't want to get into it, but look at the emotion that we have. Look at how we handle conflict and different opinions. We need to try to let go of our anger. We need to help others let go of their anger and try to find what we have in common. And I don't want to lecture in here, but I will say word of mouth and each of us doing a part goes a long way. I wish I knew a lot more about cars, but I guess I'll tell you this much. I choose who to work on my car based off of who I know or word of mouth. And I'd ask you the same thing in this is, as we get moving forward, how can you help us become healthy? And mental health, in all my years, it was there, but we didn't talk about it a lot. When there were problems, we had someone to go and get help, but we didn't address how we can be proactive. And to steal a piece, while it's always been the invisible curriculum, you take a look at everything going on in society and with COVID, it needs to be very visible. We need to tend to it. So I just say this as a piece, that's why it is a big rock. It goes back to relationships. If we aren't ready and able, we're not going to get very far. And that leads us to our last one. To me, a lot of these are common sense. When you have common sense stuff it's hard to argue against, that's a strategy, that's a purpose. That's why you call it a big rock. Literacy. Number one indicators through success when it comes to the academic side is how well you can read and write. And reading is that foundation. It crosses all of the content areas. And we are a comprehensive school district. We will have the arts, music, art, theater. Those are critical for well-rounded. But we also know that to do that well, reading is fundamental. So when we take a look at it with academics, I just want you to know that we're going to align our resources. When you look at also what is put onto us with the READ Act, it has a good intention. But now it's not done to us. We control the purpose, and it fits well. And you work on multiple things with one focus, and it makes a lot of sense. But there's requirements placed into it, but now we can align those requirements and make it more purposeful. And where we spend our time and resources is what really matters. That's how you know it's a priority. And I think the last part as you start to see is, as we talk about it, educational equity in work. Each and every student in this district matters. I am very competitive and proud. We will be the best school district we aren't already. but we will be the best school district for each and every student. We're going to work to help every student hit a high level of preparedness, proficiency, and that's key. And I think one of the biggest things that it starts with is as you transfer over the reading and writing skills, it transfers over into thinking. We need the comprehensive understanding where you have less stress that you aren't successful. You're going to turn it on and be more successful. So I hope this makes sense to you. I know some of you have heard this many times, but I think many of you haven't. And sometimes hearing it again, the why helps. So I might have taken a little more than 15, David. But I think on the beginning part, especially with where we are with a public health order, I wanted to make sure that you heard it. So many of you, it might not be as important. I found it ironic that even last night, I'm listening for an hour and a half of public comment on Tri-County. Like, really? But it's important. It's impactful. And I would just want you to know in those things that we address it. We will be prepared. How we carry things, the last thing it says how we carry things and take it home and share how we feel about it. The one piece I'd say as a parent that I learned from my parents that I try to model is sometimes my biggest frustrations, my kids don't need to hear about it. My biggest worries, my kids don't need to hear about it. They have enough to worry about. They're going to be adults at some point, but let them be kids as long as they can. And my daughter she will be embarrassed if she knows I said this, but she believed in Santa Claus through 8th grade. Where does that happen, right? So I say this in pause and to laugh a little bit. I wanted to end that because, that's sometimes we take ourselves and everything else too seriously. We can find the problems and solve and work around it. And I think this is a great challenge for us to step that up even more. And in times of emotion and anger and everything else, and I'm right there with you. I live here, work here, raise our kids here. I'm right there with you. I'm going to challenge us to step up. Challenge us to step up to come together on it, see it through, do it well, get through it. Because whether we disagree or whatever, we're going to have to. So if we have to, let's make it the best we can. Anything I put my name on, I'm going to do the best that I can because that's who I am. That's who we are. So I say that not to lecture, but I say it to say, help me, help us. Thank you for helping Douglas County. You spend endless hours. There will be conflict, but I need you to know that conflict can make us better, but we need to do it in a great way, in a purposeful way. So I'm going to turn it back over to David, and we'll have some questions for you. That way we can answer and go from there.
Very good. Thank you, Superintendent Wise. Yeah. So our hope is that as you listen to where we're headed, that as a committee member, you start seeing some links, that the work that you do directly helps support the work the district needs to do for the benefit of our kids. So that's why it was important tonight, I felt, for you to hear an overview of where we're headed, where we've been, and where we're going. And so I just want to thank you again for all you're doing. We want to get you into your breakout sessions as soon as possible, so that's where some of the work can be done. Are there any quick or burning questions, though, of what you've heard in this session that you would need answers for before we send you into your breakout sessions? Any quick questions or things you would like to know before we move you out? Want some clarity on that? Yeah, that was a little shocking, huh? So I'm going to have Sandy Marsh is going to talk with you about where we're locating you to do the work with your committee. We will not come back into this room. So once your work with your committee is done, you're free to go. The end product that we're hoping for is at our next board meeting, we need to approve the priorities and the directions of your committee. And so by the end of tonight, it's our hope that you'll have a draft board liaisons that we give to Sandy to be able to attach to our agenda for August 24th for us to vote on. Okay? Any questions about your charge for when you go to breakout rooms? Any questions about that? All right. Sandy, go ahead and let us know where we're going to send people. Do you want this?